interesting. What an interesting day. What an interesting day. Hello. Welcome back to Vision and Isle, where we're going to be clearing Vision and MSI. The series where I take the experiences and knowledge I learned from watching all of their playoff series into the best of ones so far, and the rest of MSI going forward. A lot of shakeups has happened, and a lot of recontextualization about this, like where each team really scales up against each other, and it's a lot of good stuff. I don't think that nothing, as a heads up, nothing in the top 5 for me has changed in terms of like power ranking or like ranking so far in terms of expectations of who's going to go there. But the top 6, however, or the bottom 7, however, have really had a lot of shakeups. So let's just jump into it. Let's talk about a bunch of the games. And so, as such, with my lovely little tools, let's move to the first group, RNG versus Unicorns of Love. And, well, doesn't look very good for the Unicorns today. Honestly, a lot about what I was expecting from them hasn't shown through at all within the last 3 days, and it's really telling and worrisome because this was what I was expecting to be a team that could be fairly competitive enough against the tier 1 and tier 2 teams. They could take games off of them. They would probably be able to shake it up, have a lot more creativity, and honestly, their pick and bans have been not awful, but just they don't show a lot of thought process, and a lot of weaknesses are shown that come up with it, and it doesn't help, unfortunately, that you have to compare them to Royal Never Give Up and Pentanet GG, teams that I've faced as like the top, or sorry, is the top part over here, right, and then the bottom there, like. When you have to be squished in the middle against what is the absolute best and possibly near the worst, but it doesn't help. Now, I can appreciate that they were being proactive in this game, but I don't know if they were really prepared to face off against the strategy that Royal Never Give Up came up with. And to me, that's really worrisome. It shows a lack of not only preparedness, but ability to adapt on the fly. And I think it really shook them up, especially because this was just a real big slacking of all things. I wrote down even, like, is this season 3 or /5, like, where any individual that snowballs tends to be, like, the end of the game, and usually carries that up momentum to everybody else, and it was just absolute disaster for them. What I really wished would happen is that URL would probably recognize more often when something was being forced onto them for a mistake, because their composition unfortunately required a lot of like scaling, a lot of time to farm, a lot of time to be able to like get things going. And when the first dive happened and the lane swaps were going through, and Royal Never Give Up kept the pressure up so much that they had no time to collect any resources for themselves, and they were just answering everything that RNG was giving to them. I think that was the thing they should have avoided. They shouldn't have been answering anything. They should have been like absorbing as much as they can, especially since like their composition is fairly weak early game. Like, what do they have here? They had a Cassidon, a Nocturne, a Varus, a Nidalee, and a Leona. And unfortunately, this composition requires early leads to be able to do anything. But the second that you were relinquished of those opportunities, you want to absorb as much as possible. Use the resources that would be there to give you early leads to mitigate any particular advantages that happen. But instead, what happened is that every time RNG tried to make a play, Unicorns would either answer cross map or like answer to them directly. and you can tell that they were kind of disoriented and just being bombarded on all sides. And unfortunately, it's not like, and this is a roster, by the way, that like did do incredibly well in Worlds 2020, given the region they have. They even had an upgrade into their bottom lane position. Otherwise, it's a virtually the same roster. And so you would expect maybe that they would be good at adapting, because that's what they showed at Worlds, and they kind of showed that a little bit during their playoffs. But so far at MSI, they showed very little adaptability or wanting to adopt the conventions so far, or at least like the playstyle itself, which is really unfortunate, because it does, like, this kind of mentality slips into the next game that they had to play, unfortunately. And just to the same extent, Royal Never Give Up has had a very clean game. They have a couple of slip-ups and mistakes, but I think they're using this as their playground or their limit tester at this moment. They know they're going to make it to the next round. Their largest competition had to technically forfeit due to like travel restrictions. So at this point, what could have been like valuable practice time for RNG, I would expect, is now just limit testing and just seeing how far they can go. Now, I don't think that's actually what's happening. You can see a lot of the times RNG, even with enormous leads, are playing very respectfully or taking their times, even if the other moments they are being, as the casters call it, fast and loose. But that still doesn't mitigate the fact that it's definitely just testing time more than anything else for RNG. They get to play a lot of more unconventional strategies that usually probably would be called out by better teams, but because we have two not as good teams, That being said, the next game I would have expected Unicorns of Love. And to bring it up, Royal Never Go Up now is 4-0. Unicorns of Love at that point became 1-2. Is that right? Yep, 1-2 at that point. So, really good pacing for Royal Never Give Up. OBS sometimes is really weird. Then we got Unicorns of Love versus Pentanet GG, and honestly, the boys in Australia impressed me. Good job, guys. The thing that I noticed the most is that UOL's drafting, and this transfers to from last game, their drafting is really scattered. They don't seem to have like a solid identity that they want to roll with, and sometimes that's fine, but they also sometimes pick things that are really difficult to play. Like, why are you still doing this? Like, there is part of me that understands why you're doing this kind of stuff while in the LCL, but you are no longer there. That kind of approach does not work long term in international play, especially if you know you're not at the top of the ladder of play. And so that kind of decision making for the pick and bans is absolutely ludicrous for me. Pick something simple, something with easy enough engage and good follow up, and like front to back. Like, you have incredibly skilled players for this, and because Pentanet literally as a team from a region that thrives on the simple compositions, because that's what the LCO is. Australia, Oceania has like a swath of teams that play very simple compositions. This is like their bread and butter, and that's the best thing out of this region, is that they know to focus on something that works consistently, and like they've got solid engage opportunities through like Gnar, Morgana, Rakan is great, and fantastic follow up from like the Samira and Lee Sin, and overall damage mix up. They have good disengage on top of it with the same kind of tools. Like, they have a solid setup for their 5v5. Like, I wrote down it still needed leads early because unfortunately the scaling is not there for them compared to the other side. But like, there is like no engage on the other side with like, where's the engage from the game that they had here? Right? Like, are you saying that an Udyr hitting one person with a stun is the engage? If so, it didn't do anything. Um, and like it's unfortunate because UOL has really good setups for stuff. They do great jungle tracking and vision play, but like PGG Pentanet literally came up with some good tempo, even if it was slight. Um, like, and really unfortunate because like UOL showed like a good response to what Pentanet was doing early in, and they were able to keep up the gold so that they were not like so far behind from the tempo that Pentanet was bringing up. But they, at some point, like they were not, like UOL needed to hold control of the game much faster, and they didn't. They let Pentanet call the shots from second one, and the only downside is I think Pentanet should have been the ones to make it so that they were upping their tempo, getting more gold leads, being able to balloon that lead. But instead, they ended up having to do so punishing. If I remember correctly, the thing that like really like threw it off the edge over here was at the 19-minute mark. It was fairly close all the way through, right? Like UOL had a slight gold lead. UOL had a slight gold lead, while Pentanet had the tempo lead, and they were the ones calling the shot. And so to me, tempo is like much more important than gold, unless you're like getting to 5 to 6 plus gold lead, like K down. At that point, your tempo lead means nothing. You're just gonna keep getting punished. But the tempo lead early in really solidifies your opportunity to get more gold later on. And UOL was literally just waiting to be punished. And Pentanet, I wish they were being more proactive in this game, because the second they got a punish in, they went through the ringer. They didn't have the best Baron, unfortunately for them, but enough for them to gain the gold lead. And UOL had some really weird map movement after that. Like they clearly looked lost into what to approach with it. I appreciate that Pentanet had much better vision this time, and that they stayed to their guns with their team fighting. I don't think the LCO or the Oceanic region has like the best team fighting teams from the world, but considering that's usually what their bread and butter is as a region as a whole, I appreciate that Pentanet stuck to that and had like very good play overall, especially against like Unicorns of Love, also another fairly strong team fighting team. And I think that Pentanet's going to appreciate the kind of stuff that they're going to get out of this group. So like, fantastic. And good on Pentanet to close quickly, because usually they don't in their own region. They tend to dilly-dally, and I really appreciated seeing them close. Unicorns, unfortunately, today's really changed my perspective into how close they were actually to tier 2 teams, especially if they weren't so adaptive. It really affected how far they're going to be moved around. But for the moment, I'm going to still put them back to where they were. At the end of this, Unicorns and Pentanet are tied 1-3 each, meaning that the race is going to be them facing off against each other 2 more times, and one of the teams has to win twice, or else it's just a best of 3. Which best of 3s are fun. Oh, what the heck? There we go. Okay. Next, we have, oh my goodness, Damwon Kia versus our friends from Japan, Detonation FocusMe, the boys. If you guys watched my series, the Road to MSI, and at the end I always leave at the end card the playlist for that, I mentioned now I'm always concerned about the state of Japan because they're a region that improves year to year to year. But they had a little dip last year, but that the way that their playoff series were working out is that I didn't think they were going to do so hot here. And boy, am I glad that I was wrong. Like, so absolutely wrong. I had slated Detonation FocusMe to be like in the bottom 4, and I reevaluated that really quickly from this. Not only did they properly they properly looked at how Damwon Gaming, Kia, or Damwon Kia, whatever you want, Damwon, plays their games and how weak their early game is compared to all of the other top 4 or 5, I'm going to say top 4 teams play from this tournament. Because, holy smokes, they they really showed up for 38 minutes straight. Unfortunately, just like usually the rest of the Japanese league, the closing is not as consistent or great, but they had solid team fighting. Despite what the casters say, I don't really understand. I don't know if it's because of the regular season from Japan, but Detonation FocusMe was definitely a team that I thought had like a myriad of very successful team fighting tools. Besides that, I really appreciated the Detonation FocusMe DFM played too early game incredibly hard. Like they put all their eggs in the basket right there, regardless of the fact that they had like a scaling composition, and they recognized the awkward nature of the team fighting tools that existed with Damwon, that there's like virtually none, and the fact that it was a 1-4 composition, and attacked that lane consistently, showing that they needed to attack the win condition. Fantastic. Great vision early in as well. Damwon was answering fine enough in the early game. They're a team that's pretty terrible in the pre-15 minute across the board, and that's something that that's been criticized of them frequently. And I mentioned it also in that same series of videos that about Damwon, that for me it was really hard to evaluate how they were going to come in, because they had one playoff series where the entirety of the first 15 minutes awful play, but the second one they played great in the first 15 minutes, and it's hard to tell which kind of Damwon's going to show up, because the vast majority of the time, including in the regular season, they played really poorly in the early game, to the point where like I think it's not the last place team, but like near the bottom of the ladder, they at the start of the year they had upset victory, they lost to a low team. And so, like, the same thing almost happened here. Let's see. Yeah, they had Detonation FocusMe also had very good vision and some solid neutrals, which is an improvement from what they usually had during their playoff series and from their other games so far. And what surprises me more, and what kind of me with the whole thing, is that despite the tempo lead and how well they were managing Damwon, is that Detonation FocusMe were not ballooning the lead. And then I wrote over here, yeah, so like Detonation FocusMe should be ballooning the lead more, but with an efficient Baron they gained a 4K lead, but literally the lead started to shrink, and that they were getting sloppier and sloppier with their neutral setups. So like the early game, they had great neutral objective setups, but near the end of it, it started getting a little bit, they started meandering around the way to approach it, and it was not, I couldn't like appreciate what was happening. And it always, because of that, it always made me really nervous, like the casting desk, and I imagine Twitter, because I couldn't watch these live again. I had like my leg was really acting up, and I had no energy to like watch them live, which is why this is maybe a little bit later. But as I'm watching this, I'm looking at the clock the entire time, and saying to myself, okay, so when does Damwon do the big team fight win, and then win the game? Like, when does it happen? It has to happen. And the 36-minute mark happens, and the 38-minute mark happens, and they've literally, like, Detonation, like DFM, pushes into the base, and it looks pretty convincing at this point. There's a couple of risky team fights that happen, and then boom. Damwon Gaming get away again with one team fight and a clean close. And I would probably dock them lower into the list if it wasn't for the fact that, like, Mad Lions and Paris Saint-Germain are very close in skill, but they haven't reached the part where I'm convinced that they would win against Damwon. And Cloud9 is whatever. But the fact that Damwon recognize their win conditions still, and know exactly that once they have hit a marker, they know they can win the game, is scary, and I think it's kind of bullshit that they don't take the early parts of the game seriously, or that they're like, Coma, you're my favorite coach, right? You do pick and bans in ways that like baffle me sometimes and like impress me. But this is more on the baffling side. Why would you do this? Like, this isn't one of your traditional mind game things, I hope, right? I'm hoping. I'm really hoping. With that, Damwon go 3-0, and Detonation FocusMe go 1-2. So, you know, Detonation FocusMe could definitely be the team that, like, moves on from this group. God, who knew? Who knew? Oh. With that, we'll put these little suckers back into the ranking that I had set them up yesterday. Oh. And we'll see where they move later. But now we got our Cloud9 versus Infinity. And I think this is more Cloud9 showing that they are worthy of still being a team in a tier 2 region, or that their region should still be tier 2. I'm not fully convinced. The more and more the years go by, like some years I'm like, yeah, them being like the North America being a tier 2 region makes sense. It's not just a legacy thing. It's the same thing with the PCS. That no matter how bad some of the things happen there, they're overall internationally they're good. But like the last 2 games from C9 were really questionable. So I'm happy to see that this is the kind of game that we got from them. They stuck to a simple composition. It had some awkward engages to them, but you know, it's fairly simple, and they knew that it had an early lead, so they stuck to their guns about how they're an early game team. Fantastic. They unfortunately let Infinity grab the tempo lead early in, which come on, Cloud9. You have one thing to your identity. One thing. Like, what's happening? I'm happy to see, though, that they at least didn't get themselves goaded into fights and trying to answer all the time with fighting or team fighting early in, especially if they didn't have that set up. And that they had a very good focus on objective play. Things like turrets, neutral objectives like heralds. They had a trade in dragons early in, if I remember correctly. No, they had all 3 drakes. Yeah, so like, fantastic. And over time, they took those leads that they got from the objective play and really like ballooned it fairly well. And awesome. They had great vision denial and setup. Let's see here. And over time, yeah, and what it's unfortunate to me is that I wrote a lot about what Cloud9 was doing, and it felt very much the way that Infinity, they got their first setup for the tempo, and then slowly but surely just kind of retreated into themselves. And it started to look more like the way they looked in the playoffs, and I'm not super hype about it. I was really impressed with their first game against Pain, and I was decently okay with the way that they were playing against against Damwon, or not against Pain. Sorry, I was decently impressed with the way they played against Detonation FocusMe, and I was really I was okay with the way that they were playing against Damwon because of the proper recognition. But here they kind of felt lackluster. It's kind of the same way that like Unicorns of Love didn't look like they were adapting properly, but we've seen like Infinity adapt pretty well here. And I'm surprised they didn't take advantage of the leads they got early. I'm surprised they didn't take advantage of the type of composition they had to split up Cloud9 at any given point. I'm kind of confused, really. And it's not like I expected them to win. Like, no one expected Cloud9 to lose to Detonation FocusMe. Heck, the way that they were playing against Damwon, you'd think Cloud9 was going to do pretty solidly in this tournament. And so I expected them to still win against in this match, but I also expected them to kind of falter a lot more than they did just in like the first 10 minutes or so. It just yeah, it was just not great from them. And I also thought the positioning from Infinity were like the map movement or the positioning for team fights looked more like, okay, we need to do a thing, let's take the position we have once we recognize we have to do a thing, instead of any particular setup. So it wasn't a great showing from them, unfortunately. And it's not like, oh, they're playing against a team that's super, like, way better than them. No, this is like, they're within like a good couple of skill levels. I don't know how to explain this, but like, they're within touching distance, right? Like, these teams are not that far apart. The only teams that are like super far apart from everybody is literally Royal Never Give Up and everyone else, right? And like, it's a huge lead. The only team that comes close to them so far, in terms of what I can tell from all of the stuff I've watched, is Damwon, maybe Mad on a good day. And so far, and I'll probably mention this from the next game, nothing about the way that Mad is playing right now convinces me that they are on the same level as the other two teams. So like, Infinity and Cloud9 are within touching distance to each other. And so it's not unlikely for them to win, and it's not unlikely for them to properly play against Cloud9 in a way that shows not just like, oh, cool, they got a couple of leads early and then they just lost the entire time and got themselves steamrolled. No, it's really unfortunate because they had a solid start against DFM, and we literally just witnessed DFM almost beating Damwon off of a good read. So like, it can happen. Like, you can do like, and we saw Detonation FocusMe beat Cloud9. Like, it is totally possible. So I don't know where all this gumption is, and it's worrying me, like, as if I'm supposed to put them back into the bottom, like literally last place, like I did in the original listing. But I don't think it's that harsh right now. I think it's just this was a weird showing in this match. Alright. This video is running a little later than I expected. So we're going to go to our next one, which was, speaking of Mad, we got ourselves Mad Lions versus Pain. And Pain, yo, Brazil, you're impressing me more and more all the time. Not that I think your region is like at that point yet, but like, Pain is, I think, the most improved team from start of their playoffs till now. I have not seen a team like level up this much so frequently in such a short period of time since TSM, but then they even fell flat. So like, fantastic flexible drafting. I do think, however, they picked off a little bit more than they can chew. Again, smaller regions or lower tier regions need to like hunker down on simplicity, but honestly, you do you all the time. You're going to do what you're going to do, but I do think simpler would have been better here, especially against a team like Mad, who decided to do an AP Kog'Maw mid. Mad, honestly, how, like, this strategy looks fine on paper sometimes, but you don't have any form of like engage in this composition. There's like a good solid amount of disengage, but this is prone to failure so hard. If Pain picked a composition with just like a simpler execution or much better engage to it, you would have lost 100% from this game. Like, definitely from the way that this was being played. I appreciate that Pain had a level 1 play, even if Mad was able to neutralize the effects from it. Good. I love seeing this kind of proactivity from teams. Mad also still had very solid early game from this. They had a lot of early, they stole a bunch of neutrals, especially the one is so unfortunate, where they had the lantern over the wall Blast Cone Morgana, Smite Lantern out, clean, easy peasy, so nice. But it's like these small little leads that Matt kept getting that allowed him to get a lot of gold lead from that point, and they ballooned it pretty well until they got really hyphy for some reason, and they wanted to like show off and show like, hey guys, we can be fast and loose like the other two top 1 teams. Come on, we're a tier 1 team. We're like RNG and Damwon. We can do this too. And they got immediately punished for it, like hard, really hard. They had like such a smooth early game, and then their mid game, and I'm so happy Pain punished them so hard for this, because Pain Gaming is a very solid comeback team. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and it was so close. It really was. I kind of wish that like the thing that like bums me most about this is that as I'm watching this, I'm going, okay, they got a TP and the Tom Kench with the Aphelios going in, or not the Aphelios, but the with the Tristana, and they had a Camille, and the Camille didn't have teleport. But I'm like, all right, cool. All they need to do is make sure that like they send Olaf. Just send Olaf down. Camille can literally disrupt things, and Olaf can just go down slowly but surely, and they would have been able to finish it. And they didn't. I'm like, no. No. Oh, no. And I felt so bad. This could have been such a good showing from Pain. And I think it still was. Like, honestly, they had a great recognition of how the win conditions were supposed to do, and they were very clever with the way that they were applying their vision, making sure that they couldn't get denied as easily. They had great showing of how to apply the pressure and wave manipulation. They played the 1-4 composition, like, not perfectly, but very well. Much better than I expected them to do, and much better than what I've seen so many teams from, like, the Tier 2 or Tier 3 regions do. And this is a Tier 4 team. Like, they are literally in Seed 4. And they were pulling this off so well. They had the top inhib. They ended up almost getting the bot inhib. And, oh, man. This is, honestly, one of my videos, I think it's like the most viewed or the second most viewed from the Road to MSI. And it was just me just talking about how poor I'm thinking that Brazil's going to show, because there's like a lot of things that they are not applying, and they don't apply to their win conditions of their compositions, and they tend to default to team fighting. And my god, am I so happy to see this. This is a pure masterclass of, like, we know what our win conditions are, we know what our vulnerabilities are in terms of how our win condition is supposed to apply, so let's apply it to that and do our best from it, because this was great. Like, win or loss, Pain, good showing on this one, really great. And with it, though, unfortunately, Pain goes 1-3. But hey, you're 1-3, or 1-2. Sorry, I don't know why I wrote 1-3. You're 1-2. You are within touching distance of being able to like make it to the next round. Honestly, keep it up. Really solid stuff. All right. So next up, and I think this is the last game of, yeah, I believe this is the last game of the day, and this was Paris Saint-Germain, or the Talons, PSG, versus the Fast Bay Istanbul Wildcats. And I'm gonna level with you guys. When I came into this, I thought Turkey was gonna be pretty middling. I didn't expect them to do anything pretty significant. But then they slowly started, like, but then day 2 came around, or day 1 and day 2 came around, and I was like, alright, they haven't done anything to garner what I think is going to be any solid, like their game 1 with Pain, they had a very good early game, but they didn't close, and it was like, alright, this is part of the weaknesses of the region. This is what I expected kind from them. And then day 2, and I was like, it's fine. It's like I wasn't expecting them to beat Mad. Maybe they'll have a proper showing. And this was just really not good, guys. Not good at all. Um, they. This is the thing, right? When I expect teams to pick simpler compositions, I don't expect them to then also flub up the pick and ban this hard. And this is a situation where I wouldn't say it's comp difference. It's not, right? They both are very similar. They're 1-3-1s with awkward engages. The difference here is that PSG had a better sieging and diving team, while as the Wildcats had a better time, was more awkward in terms of the follow-ups of their engage, and had some pretty good neutral objective options. We didn't see any of that. It was, and I think this is also me being pretty. I can appreciate though that PSG is showing that no, the fact that their region is not as competitive to them as as they are, like, really far and above ahead of the rest of their teams in the Pacific slash East Southeast Asia region, that they aren't going to suffer as much as they thought they would in terms of how close they are against Mad Lions and all the other teams, and that they would have a hard time against being competitive. No, I'm happy to say that, like, at least from this, Paris Saint-Germain Talons is going to do just fine. I have no doubt in my mind. They might even beat Mad Lions on the counterpunch. If they don't, doesn't matter to me. They are almost solidly going to make it out. And so, barring something, anything really, but, like, this was great map play out of PSG all around. They were playing very confidently and a little too overconfidently, and I think it's because they had recognized how their team was going to play now with Doggo in the bot lane. But they still had a solid showing in terms of the team fighting. They kept up the tempo, ballooned the lead very well and cleanly. They showed no moments where anything would kill their tempo. Even if they were being a little too hyphy and they got caught out in some places, their tempo almost felt nothing in terms of a jolting. Really solid stuff. They had great vision control. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, so I put a note here, like, PSG are very aggro, causing some misplays, but doesn't let the Wildcats breathe. And it shows because River was deathless. Like, how does that happen, guys? Like, he was the jungler. That should have been, like, the one role that shouldn't ever go deathless. And I didn't see anything in the same way, in the same vein that Unicorns of Love, and this is really unfortunate because both Wildcats and the Unicorns showed enough for me to be like, oh, maybe there's something here. Maybe they're, like, closer to being one of the top 6 teams than, like, any of the other teams are. But no, today they showed equally an inability to adapt or to even recognize how to approach this. And it's not like, oh, they're up against another tier 2 team, they're gonna get bold. No. I don't think you understand how little Paris Saint-Germain or PSG Talents have had to face in competition in the other regions, but, like, they didn't have to face much in terms of competition at all. You literally just have to challenge them in anything. Just challenge them. Mad did it, and Mad is definitely not that far, like, that so far ahead in terms of the buck to even remotely think that, oh, you need to be on the level of the tier 1 teams to beat PSG. For sure, not at all the case. And with that, PSG ends up 2-1, within distance of confirming that they're going to make it to the next round. And Wildcats are 0-3, one game away from being eliminated from the tournament, giving me very little faith in terms of what to expect out of this team when it comes to the next couple of games. So that being said, This video is much longer than I expected. I have over here the updated list of what I think the power rankings are. So we're going to move the Wildcats to the side for a bit. I moved Detonation FocusMe up here. Let's move the Unicorns for a bit. I moved Pain up to here. Both of these teams have shown a gradual and very much appreciated improvement in terms of their play. I moved Infinity up one as well, mostly because of the ways that it just shows up in terms of rankings. And I moved the Unicorns here and the Wildcats here. And now you'd be thinking, didn't Pentanet just beat Unicorns? Wouldn't they have to go up a little bit? Unfortunately, I think this is more to do with the lack of adaptability from Unicorns than the ability from Pentanet. And I think if Unicorns literally just buck up and like apply themselves better, that they probably are still better than Pentanet, even if just slightly. And unfortunately, I think that Wildcats are close to being last place in my mind in this case, despite like how strongly they came into the tournament. It doesn't bode very well. Those are my thoughts, and let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below. Honestly, any perspective works here. The only ones that I think make a little less sense are just the pure results based. Then, in fact, this definitely wouldn't look like this. But you let me know what you think in the comments down below. Is there like a different way that you would organize these, right? Like, do you think that Dam 1 should be lower? Maybe Mad is lower? Do you think Cloud 9 should probably be much lower because of the recent result? I don't know. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Over here, I'm going to put in my playlist of my road to MSI, where I watch every region's playoff series. This is where I get most of my informed decisions based off of the best of ones that we have today. And over here, I'm going to put in the playlist for, so far, the Clearing Visions series that I have for MSI. And thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day.